Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am the presenter for Group 10 and we were asked to do the question 10. So, first thing first, let me introduce my group members. Firstly, Syafiqah binti Muhammad Samsuddin, S59253. Next, Rafiqah Shahirah binti Rohizan, S59231. Next, Farah Izzati binti Zulkifli, S59249. And lastly, me, Natasha binti Mahadzir, S59227. Based on question 10, there are two situations. And we have to advise the party whether or not they can repudiate the contract based on the situation. Situation 1. Syam ordered a 100 meters printed fabric and 100% cotton in quality from Global Textile, but then the company delivered 100 meters of printed fabric, but 90% in cotton and 10% polyester in quality. Okay, situation 2. Yani bought a kettle, but first time she used it, the kettle exploded. So, based on this situation, let's see if they can repudiate the contract. As we proceed, I will start with the situation first, which is Syam ordered 100 of printed fabrics and 100% cotton in quality from Global Textile, but the company delivered 100 meters of 90% cotton and 10% polyester in quality. So, the issue we got from here is Syam able to repudiate the contract due to the breach of implied terms such as the sale of goods by description. Next is principle. Syam case is underlying under Section 15 Sales of Goods Act 1957, which is contract for the sale of goods by description. We presume that on the contract, Global Textile has already indicated that the printed fabrics are 100% cotton in quality. So, we assume that Syam is relying on the contract description of the product, which is 100% cotton in quality. But then the company supplied 100 meters printed fabric, but 90% in cotton and 10% polyester in quality. So, Global Textile breached a contract for the sale of goods by description. As for the same case, Nagurdas Purushottam Das versus Mitsui Busan Kaisha Limited, where the case are the flour was sold in bags with a well-known trademark under a previous contract between the parties for the sale of flour. The same as our past contract. More flour was ordered, although the flour was a comparable quality. It did not have the same well-known trademark. The goods did not fit the description, so according to the court, the seller was in breach. While another situation is Farah versus Fripp, and the case is a buyer who purchased a second-hand reaping machine without ever seeing it. The previous year, the seller said it was brand new and had only cut 50 or 60 acres. The gadget was, in fact, quite old. The court determined that this was a sale by description, that the seller was in breach because the machine did not match its description. Lastly, application and conclusion. So, after all the discussion that have been made, there are breach of the implied requirement because of the differs from Global Textile description, and we advise Syam that he can repudiate the contract. And according to Section 12.2, Syam has the option of treating the contract whether repudiated or continuing it while claiming damages. So that's settled for situation 1. Let's continue with situation 2 with our second representative, Rafiqah Shahirah. Thank you.
I will continue our presentation with the next issue. The next issue is whether Yani has the right to reject the contract due to the breach of an implied condition that the good must be reasonable fit for a particular purpose. According to the Sale of Good Act 1957, we assume the buyer bought the kettle under Section 16(1)(a), which state that the good shall be reasonable fit for its purpose, where the buyer make known to the seller either expressly or impliedly the purpose for which the seller require the goods. So, we assume that buyer relies on the seller's skill and judgment on the choice of the kettle. Besides, the buyer purchased the kettle at the electrical shop, which means goods are of description which is in the course of the seller business to supply. The buyer also bought the kettle based on the recommendation of the seller and did not buy it because under patent or under name. However, it turns out the kettle exploded the first time she used and scalded Yani. Therefore, the seller has committed a breach of the implied condition under Section 16(1)(a) and also under Section 16(1)(b), where the goods are sold in the course of business and bought by description for a seller who deals in goods of that description must be of mentionable quality or fitness for any particular purpose of good. The same principle applies in Priest versus Last 1903, which is the buyer who bought a hot water bottle from the seller was a chemist. His wife used the hot water bottle 5 times before the bottle burst and scalded her. According to the evidence, the bottle was not fit for use as a hot water bottle. The seller stated that the buyer had not specified the purpose for which the hot water bottle would be used. However, the court rejected this argument. The seller has a right to recover the cost for treatment for the buyer's wife injuries. It is because the buyer trusted the seller's judgment and the seller has indeed used the hot water bottle for its intended purpose. Another case that illustrates this issue is used for East Pte Ltd versus Pacific Navigation Co Pte Ltd 1990, in which the plaintiff were the producer and supplier of Duke's marine engine and spare components. They demanded the price of a replacement top part of the injector jump NTP supplied to be used on the defendant's ship main engine. Because the NTP featured 4 large springs, the defendant claimed it was defective. The main engine was severely damaged, crippling the vessel, which had to be repaired at huge cost. The defendant counterclaimed that the plaintiff's equipment for their ship engine was unfit for purpose and of poor quality. According to the court, the defendant depended exclusively on the plaintiff to provide the NTP that could be utilized with the ship engine. Because the plaintiff in the action are both seller and manufacturer of the NTP supplied to the defendant, they are responsible to the defendant in both contract and tort for the breach of contract and negligence in the manufacture of the NTP. For the application and conclusion for this issue, we are going to assume that Yani relies on the seller's skill and judgment on the choice whether the kettle is safe and good to use. But after the first use, it was found that there was a problem with the kettle, which eventually exploded and burned Yani. This event showed that the seller has breached the contract on the condition on the quality and safety for the purpose of good. Due to breach of contract stated, the goods sold are not fitted for their purpose. Therefore, based on Section 12(2) Sales of Goods Act 1957, Yani have the right to reject the contract and claim from the seller for the damage and the injuries caused from the exploding kettle. I think that's all from us. Thank you.